The rain, a cold, persistent drizzle, had slicked the winding drive leading up to Elias Thorne's rchitectural marvel. Protagonist navigated the unmarked sedan through the security gate, which slid open with a whisper, revealing a structure of polished concrete and glass that seemed to float above the manicured landscape. The smart home, as Thorne had famously called it, was a fortress of minimalist design, a testament to his genius and, perhaps, his isolation. Even under the leaden sky, it exuded a Anauster beauty, a perfect geometric puzzle. Protagonist parked beside a patrol cruiser and a nondescript black SUV. Stepping out, the damp air bit at his exposed skin, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and something metallic, a residue of the storm or perhaps something else entirely. His bag, heavy with the tools of his trade, felt familiar in his grip. He offered a curt nod, his eyes already conveying the story. "Dr. Singh, thanks for coming out. Architect Elias Thorne, apparent suicide." He gestured towards the imposing front door, which, predictably, opened silently as we approached, responding to an unseen sensor. The initial call came in from his personal AI assistant. The detective continued, his voice low, almost reverent in the hushed interior. Couldn't reach him for his morning briefing. Security protocols disabled remotely. He was found him in his main living area. The interior was a study in controlled environment. The AI was cool, dry, and filtered, carrying no trace of the outside world. Walls of seamless white stretched to an impossibly high ceiling, punctuated by vast panes of glass offering a panoramic, if currently gray, view. Every surface gleamed, every object meticulously placed. It was less a home and more a gallery exhibit of extreme order. Protagonist followed the detective into the vast living space. Elias Thorne lay sprawled on a low-slung, charcoal-gray sofa, a single ornate pistol resting on the polished concrete floor beside his outstretched hand. His eyes were open, staring blankly at the ceiling, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in their fixed gaze. The scene was, on its surface, textbook. A note, handwritten and brief, lay pinned beneath a crystal paperweight on a nearby smart console, its stark message visible even from where Protagonist stood. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, the detective recited, ticking off the obvious. Internal security logs confirmed Thorne was the only one in the residence for the past 12 hours. System registered no anomalies. Doors locked from the inside. Seams open and shut. Protagonist moved closer, his gaze sweeping across the room, absorbing every detail. The pistol was a vintage piece, a collector's item by the look of it, not the kind of weapon one typically kept for self-defense, let alone self-destruction. Its polished metal glinted faintly under the recessed lighting. His eyes lingered on Thorne's hand. It was open, palm up, fingers slightly curled, a posture that felt passive. Then Protagonist saw it. A minute detail, almost imperceptible. The smart console beside the sofa, a sleek, minimalist slab of obsidian glass, displayed a series of animated graphs, fluctuating data streams. It was Thorne's personal interface for managing his home's intricate systems: climate, lighting, security, entertainment. But the specific graph displayed, a complex visualization of cryptocurrency market fluctuations, seemed oddly out of place for a man moments from ending his life. Why would a dying man be observing the volatile dance of digital assets? It was a discordant note in a symphony of despair. Open and shut, you say. His voice barely audible above the hum of the unseen climate control. His internal clock, calibrated by years of dissecting the human story, had already begun to tick differently. The pistol, the note, the body. Each element felt staged, a tableau carefully arranged for an audience. A man in the throes of such a final, desperate ascent rarely bow the red with such meticulous presentation. His gaze drifted from Thorne's still form to the smart console again. The cryptocurrency graph continued its silent digital dance. It was a thread, thin and almost invisible, but a thread nonetheless. Elias Thorne was a man who lived and breathed the data, whose entire world was interconnected. The physical scene was only part of the story. The rest, Protagonist suspected, lay buried in the digital the R. I'll need a C-cess to a LL of Thorne's digital A archives. Turning to the detective. His home network, cloud storage, personal devices, everything. The detective raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise in his weary eyes. You think there's something more here, Dr. Singh? I think we need to be thorough. His voice firm, his mind already mapping out the complex digital terrain Protagonist knew Protagonist would have to navigate. The physical evidence was a closed book, but the digital one was just beginning to unfold. Later that afternoon, after the initial processing of the smart home scene, his investigation led him away from the pristine architecture and into a different kind of temple to technology. The coordinates Protagonist had been given led to an unassuming industrial park on the city's outskirts. The AI here was frigid, a stark contrast to the controlled warmth of Thorne's home. Rows upon rows of server racks stretched into the distance, a gleaming forest of metal and light. The low, incessant hum of cooling fans was the only sound, a mechanical drone that vibrated through the floor. Indicator lights, a million tiny LEDs, pulsed and flickered in a synchronized silent ballet. Green, ember, red, each a testament to the ceaseless flow of information. This was where Thorne's most sensitive digital assets were stored, physically isolated, disconnected from the internet, secured by layers of encryption and biometric locks. Each one a digital vault containing untold wealth, or secrets. I needed to know if a NY activity, however minute, had occurred around Thorne's digital presence, especially in the hours leading up to my death. The physical scene had presented a meticulously crafted illusion. Here, in the heart of the digital world, the truth, unvarnished and unforgiving, might finally reveal itself. The tension that had settled in my gut at Thorne's home solidified into a determined resolve. Protagonist was no longer looking for a simple suicide. Protagonist was hunting for a ghost in the machine. Later that afternoon, after the initial processing of the smart home, Protagonist found myself back the precise, sterile environment. The examination facility. The AIR, scrubbed clean and chilled to a constant 15 degrees Celsius, carried the faint metallic tang of disinfectant. Before him, on the stainless steel examination table, lay the renowned architect. His meticulously sculpted features, so often broadcast across digital platforms, were now slack, devoid the sharp intellect that had defined his public persona. The official report from the scene had been unequivocal. A self-inflicted gunshot wound to the temple, a classic tragic end for a man under immense financial pressure, a according to early reports. The entry wound was textbook, the trajectory consistent with the scene's preliminary assessment. No signs of struggle, no defensive wounds immediately apparent. Not the usual clenching or flailing one might expect in a struggle, but a peculiar stillness, almost too relaxed. Protagonist ran a gloved hand over the skin, noting the cool, firm texture. It was on the left forearm, just above the wrist, that Protagonist found it. A faint discoloration, no larger than his thumbnail, almost imperceptible against the pallor-thee skin. Not a fresh bruise, but one a day or two old, its edges still slightly indistinct, a mottled purplish yellow. It wasn't the kind of mark you'd get from an accidental bump. Its shape was too specific, too linear, almost as if a thin, rigid object had pressed firmly against the skin. I leaned closer, adjusting the overhead lamp, the fluorescent light reflecting off the skin like a polished surface. This was not a bruise from a fall, was arc of restraint, or perhaps a grip. A quiet alarm bell began to toll in the back of Thed. "Assistant, could you prepare the micro-sampling kit?" My voice cutting through the hum of the thalation system. The A assistant, a diligent young man, moved with practiced efficiency. Pay particular attention to the discoloration on the forearm. We will need tissue samples and a full photographic record. The internal examination confirmed the immediate cause of death, but my focus remained on the subtle deviations. As I meticulously processed the tissue samples, particularly from the respiratory system, I noticed something else under the microscope. Microscopic particles, almost imperceptible, embedded deep within the lung tissue. They weren't organic. They weren't typical environmental dust. They were metallic, iridescent, catching the light like tiny, fragmented prisms. Protagonist isolated a cluster of these particles, carefully transferring the M to a specialized slide for elemental analysis. The results, when they flickered onto the screen of the theatical spectrometer, sent a cold wave through him. The particles were primarily composed of a unique alloy of copper, silver, and a rare earth element. A combination not naturally occurring and not found in typical domestic or industrial environments. Was highly specialized, often used in advanced cooling systems for high-performance electronics. His mind raced. A bruise pattern inconsistent with a suicide, pointing to restraint or a struggle. This wasn't a suicide. This was a fully orchestrated deception. The architect hadn't taken his own life. Someone else had. The weight of this realization settled heavily on his shoulders. The meticulous facade of a suicide had cracked, revealing the ugly truth of homicide. The architect, a man whose life revolved around seamless integration of technology, had been exposed to something antithetical to his world, yet perhaps connected to it. And then, the metallic particles, high-performance electronics, advanced cooling systems. His thoughts immediately jumped to the infrastructure that powered such a connected life. His studied intently the digital footprint. The initial processing of the smart-thed focused on the obvious. But if this was AIR, the killer might have left a different kind of trail, one hidden in the very networks the architect built. Protagonist pictured the vast, silent spaces where such advanced components might be found, where data lived and breathed the D. Protagonist envisioned rows of towering racks, each humming with untold processing power, the AI frigid and dry. That was where the real secrets, the digital ones, were kept. And that was where the A-Nessers might truly lie. This was no longer just a physical investigation. Was a Joe A into the digital underworld, drive their microscopic trace of metal and a subtle mark on the skin. The game had changed. The microscopic theles, almost imperceptible, embedded deep within the lung tissue, were not organic. His optical microscope, a familiar extension of his own vision, brought the M into sharp, undeniable focus. They were metallic, precisely engineered fragments, far too uniform to be naturally occurring dust. This wasn't just a deviation. Was a Deliba signature, a foreign intrusion. Thorne Hatherply died. He had been subjected to something. My initial suspicion, a faint tremor in the back of my mind, solidified into a cold certainty. This was no suicide. I moved from the microscope to my workstation, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I meticulously documented every observation, cross-referencing my findings with the broader context of the scene. The minute fragmenthiupled with the subtle bruising around the neck I'd noted earlier painted a different picture entirely. Was a calculata rutila CT, disguised with chilling precision. My Cathery detective was brief, devoid of pleasantries. My initial findings weather-wrecked, my voice level, masking the surge of adrenaline. The evidence indicates foul play. We need to revisit Thorne's residence. This time, however, a digital forensics specialist, a young woman with a focused intensity and a laptop bristling with cables, was methodically mapping the network. The detective, ever stoic, watched her work, his gaze occasionally flicking to him, a silent acknowledgement of the shift in the investigation's tertiary. Thorne's entire life was mapped by this system, watching the specialist connect a myriad of devices. Lights, climate, security, Even his morning coffee. It's a digital fortress. Or a digital trap, the specialist countered without looking up, her fingers a blur on the trackpad. The more integrated, the more vulnerabilities. Her screen with lines of code, network topologies, and fragmented data streams. First pass suggests a clean slate. Almost no unusual activity logs, which is suspicious for a system this complex. My scrutinized. What are you seeing? Gaps, tapping a section of the screen. Not just deletions, but missing blocks of time in the system logs for critical periods. And some timestamps. That align with the internal clock. She paused, her brow furrowed. It's like someone didn't just delete files. They rewrote portions of the system's memory, trying to patch their tracks. The implications were profound. This wasn't a simple break-in. This was a sophistia manipulation, suggesting a killer with an intimate understanding of Thorne's cutting-edge environment, or a CSS to someone who did. The tension in the room thickened, a palpable weight pressing down on us. Can you recode the original data? The detective sked, his voice low. The specialist shook her head. Not from here. The local system has been overwritten too thoroughly. But Thorne, being Thorne, likely had redundant backups, deep archives. The iron inside was a frigid rasmelling faintly of ozone and sterile metal. Rows upon rows of hag machines. Thera Iroar lights a mesmerizing rhythmic pulse of green and AM bare, stretched into the distance. Was a digital K-Aural, housing the invisible threads that govern so much of modern existence. The specialist, veiled in a thick jacket, led us through the labyrinthine corridors. If a nigh one could hide data, he could. And if a nigh one could find it, it's because he designed the system to be ultimately traceable, even to himself. She connected her equipment to a terminal, her fingers dancing across the keyboard, a cascade of complex commands filling the screen. Minutes stretched into an eternity, punctuated only by the low thrum of Thenarvers. Then a sharp intake of breath from the theist. There, she announced, her voice tight with discovery. It's not just fragmented, it's spoofed. Access logs showing Thorne himself making changes to the smart home's core security protocols, right before the estimated time of death. But the biometric signature, it's a perfect mimicry, not an exact match, close enough to fool the system at an NNCE. She zoomed in on a series of timestamps, a sequence of events that began to unravel the carefully constructed alibi. Someone used a sophisticated bypass, then tried to make it look like Thorne himself opened the door to his own demise, digitally speaking. My mind raced, connecting the dots. The metallic particles, the subtle bruising, the digital ghost. This wasn't just murder, was an elaborate piance. The killer hadn't just taken a line they had attempted to erase their presence from the digital realm. They're a digital phantom in Thorne's place. The specialist continued her work, tracing the digital footprint. Par digital seeing external, access points, not direct physical entry. Remote manipulation. She pulled up a digital addresses, cross-referencing the M with known entities. Two primary suspects are emerging, based on their historical access to Thorne's deep network, their technical proficiency. Recent activity. She projected their profiles onto a large monitor. The first was a former business Atner, now a rival, who had helped design the initial iterations of Thorne's smart home system. The second, a brilliant but volatile prodigy who had worked under Thorne, rumored to have been dismissed under contentious circumstances. Both have strong alibis for the time of death. The detective stated, my voice flat, my eyes fixed on the profiles. One was on a private jet, the other at a Detectiveville charity gala, surrounded by witnesses. The irony was not lost on the murder committed with cutting-edge technology, leaving behind digital breadcrumbs. Yet the prime suspects were cloaked in the impenetrable shield of human alibis. The killer was not only technologically adept but cunning, anithying every move, every forensic countermeasure. The game had just begun, and the stakes were terrifyingly high. The irony was not lost on me. My initial assessment of Thorne's death as a suicide, a tragically elegant end for a man who crafted elegant spaces, had shattered. Now I saw the meticulously placed shards of a digital deception, scattered amongst the seemingly perfect tableau of my smart home. The question was no longer if was murder, but who and why. My path led me away from the sterile environment of a post-mortem examination and into the labyrinthine depths of Thorne's digital existence. The detective, a man whose the seemed to be forged from years of sifting through human deceit, met me at a detectiver of the facility. He nodded curtly, my eyes shadowed with the exhaustion of that offered more questions than answers. We've secured a access to Thorne's company servers. His personal encrypted drives, the detective stated, my voice low, almost swallowed by the low hum emanating from within. His digital life was detective's my rchitectural designs. Good luck making sense of it. I followed me through a series of heavy climate-controlled doors. The air grew colder, drier, tinged with ozone. Rows upon rows of towering racks stretched into the distance, each housing a constellation of indicaites. The rhythmic whir of cooling fans was a Kansa Ermost attic drone, a mechanical heartbeat beneath the surface of the digital world. Fluorescent lights cast a stark, unforgiving glow on the thawed concrete floor, illuminating dust motes dancing in the frigid air. It felt less like a NA archive and digital, he brain of some colossal winterthened specialist, hunched of Theonsol displaying lines of cascading code, barely acknowledged our presence. He was deep in the digital weeds, extracting gigabytes of data from Thorne's professional and personal accounts. I leaned over her shoulder, watched the screen, a silent observer in this silent, humming world. Thorne Digital the Empire, the specialist murmured without looking up. And quite a few enemies, if these communications are a nigh thing to go by. She pulled up a series of emails, encrypted chat logs, project management threads. The first thing that jumped out was the the Araya Tower project. Was Thorne's magnum opus, a multi-million-dollar smart skyscraper in a burgeoning financial district, designed to be a beacon of sustainable technology and a rchitectural innovation. But the project was clearly hemorrhaging. Budget overruns were staggering, timelines were slipping, and the integrated AI systems, Thorne's pride and joy, were plagued with persistent critical glitches. The client was threatening to pull out, the specialist explained, scrolling through a particularly heated exchange. And the primary investor group was demanding an immediate audit. Thorne was personally liable for a significant portion of the cost overruns. It looks like he was facing financial ruin if the RIA failed. At the motive then, financial desperation. But from whom? The investor group. A competiarying to snatch the project? Then came the rivalries. Thorne, it seemed, had a habit of making powerful enemies. Ano the prominent architect, a former mentor turned bitter competitor, was consistently mentioned in the communications. Their feud dated back years, stemming from a disputed intellectual property claim over a revolutionary energy-efficient stem. The specialist brought up legal documents outlining a contentious patent infringement lawsuit, currently stalled in preliminary hearings, with Thorne as the defendant. The rival architect stood to gain millions if Thorne lost. Converse specialists facing a devastating blow to my career and reputation. This rival architect sent me a pointed message just days before Thorne's death, the specialist said, highlighting a short, ominous email. It reads, "Your empire is built on sand, Thorne. Soon it will crumble, and Protagonist will be there to pick up the pieces." The chilling precision of the words echoed in the specialist the data center. A clear threat, a powerful Advetha with a deep-seated Gruden Aftheel incentive. But there was more. The Thalys navigated to Thorne's Peel files, revealing a know-the-R layer of his complicated life. A contentious legal battle with a former business partner over the ownership of an early-stage tech startup. A company that had recently secured specialisting patent for advanced smart home operating system. The partner claimed Thorne had enigmatically excluded me from the profits and developer. leading to a nasty lawsuit demanding a substantial payout, and full ownership of the Patenta court date was set for next month. The specialist infina pulling up a debt to finance the action. If Thorne lost, he would have forfeited a significant future revenue stream, possibly forcing me into bankruptcy on top of the the Raya project's issues. I absorbed the deluge of information. Though specialist under the pro only and financially, 3 distinct powerful motives had surfaced within minutes. The failing the Raya Tower project, the patent infringement lawsuit with his rival architect, and the ownership dispute with his former busyman partner. Each thread led to individuals with strong reasons to want Thorne out of the picture. Yet each suspect was cloaked in the same impenetrable alibi that plagued the initial thagation. My mind raced, connecting the dots, or the R, trying to untangle the knot. This wasn't a simple crime session. Was a calculated strike. I'm a man whose life was a complex web of imbeato innovation and bitter conflict. The tension in the AI was palpable, a silent hum that vibrated with the weight of hidden secrets. I had multiple motives, multi or potential perpetrators, but no clear path forward. The Comte Mathery's life had to become the complexity of death, and I knew this was just the beginning. The weight of Thorne's fractured life pressed on me. The Rhea the patent dispute, the bitter ownership wrangle with his former business partner, each motive a sharpened blade, poised. Suicide, the initial assessment, felt less like a conclusion and more like a convenient ways for a man whose world was Thorne's. My work wasn't about narratives, was about the cold, immutable truth embedded in the microscopic. Back in my examination bay, the sterile hum of the AIR filtration system was the only sound breaking the silence. Thorne's body, or Ra-Ta, the digitamanals of Therasoleuthicans derived from it, occupied my screens. I began with the biomechanical analysis. The trajectory of my from the upper balcony, the impact points, the fractures. They told a story of sudden, violent deceleration. A free fall, a leap, have presented a more pre-digital-matic signature. This felt guided. Or worse, altered. I zoomed in on the impact site, cross-thing with the structural integrity reports of the balcony railing. The initial police report noted a clean break, consistent with a struggle or a forceful push. But the fracture pattern, the scrutiny, suggested something more intricate. The sudden, sharp stressor, yes, but also a pre-existing weakness, almost as if the railing had been compromised, then subjected to a secondary decisive force. It complicated the picture, twisting the simple AC to falling into something far more deliberate. My gaze drifted to the high-resolution scans of Thorne's clotha. The fabric was a finely woven sin, the tick-ba expensive, designed to resist stains and wear, perfect for concealing something. I ran the RML imaging, looking for anomalies, residual heat signatures that might indicate a recent struggle, a foreign object, or even a localized chemic section. Nothing. The killer, if there was one, had Bathornesis. I moved to the spectrometry station, the instrument a silent sentinel of truth. My focus shifted to the deceased's hands. Initial sweep had shown no defensive wounds, no skin under the fingernails. Was the kind of detail that screamed for a deeper look. I took microscopic samples from the cuticles, the slight ridges of the fingerprints, the mythe spaces between skin and nail bed. Each sample went into the spectrometer's chambithe diffused light, its molecular fingerprint annullized. Our initial one a no the R. The screen glowed with specographs, a cacop the data points that I painstakingly sifted through. Most were endogenous, part of Thorne's own biological makeup, or common environmental contaminants. But then, a spike. A unique signature emerged from the background noise, small enough to be easily dismissed, but distinct enough to catch my trained eye. Was a fiber, barely visible even under a most powerful magnification. Not from Thorne's clothing, not from the balcony railing, not from the furniture in the penthouse Thornesctral signature Thalex, revealing a blend of polymers and a rare metallic coating. Was unlike a nothing I had encountered in domestic or office environments. This fiber, no thieth than a spider's silk, wedged deep within the microthy of Thorne's left tooth, they're as if it had been deliberately pressed there or transferred during a very close, precise interaction. And then, the RA anomaly. Adjacent to the fiber, a particulate. A microscopic shard, almost crystalline. Even more unusual spectral profile. It contained trace elements of rare earth metals, metals typically found in highly specialized electronic components. It was etched so deep Thorne's skin, almost a part of the epidermal layer, that it would have required significant pressure to implant. This wasn't a casual transeptheus, was contact, intimate, forceful, thect. The implications hit me with the force of a physical blow, then to suicide. This was a carefully staged murder. The fiber and the aculate, expertly hidden, pointed to a struggle that had been swiftly controlled, leaving almost no outwards. The killer had been precise, powerful, and intimately familiar with the properties of the materials they were handling. My mind raced, connecting the dots. Rare earth mass, swathed electronic components, unique polymer blends with methacoatings. Where would such materials be found? Thoughts and media waste to high-tech environments, places of their infrastructure. Places like the sprawling network installations Thorne himself had designed for clients. I knew where I needed to look next, being to understand the environment that produced such unique contaminants. The only place that made sense, a place where such specific, almost unique elements would be ubiquitous, was in a highly controlled, sophisticated digital infrastructure. My next destination was clear. I had to investigate the source. I needed to find a location that could shed light on these micro-traces. A place where the very AIR was filtered and the equipment hummed with the silent power of information. The killer had left a digital ghost, a microscopic fingerprint, air intended to follow it into the heart of their domain. The tension in the room thickened, a tangible presence. Suicide, the assessment, felt less like a conclusion and more like a convenient narrative for a man who had clearly made enemies. My gut churned with the unease of a story forced. My workstation was a digital mosaic of Thorne's days. Finana record the unication logs, security camera feeds, hundreds of gigabytes. AAL meticulously sifted. To digital sweep had yielded a testament to the killer's foresight. But I had learned long ago that true silence was an anomaly, and even the mo initials of faint impressions. A Manig, the digital forensics IList, pointed out nuttall, almost imperceptible delay in a system log entry from Thorne's home, a Udimation hub. A fraction of a seco Thorne's outside the Expedigitalians, yet consistent across a series of commands. Could be network latency, the specialist offered, or a systheater lenitioned closer, my gaze fixed on the timestamp. Or a very precise human touch, I countered, the words tasting like a eshash. A human touch designed to mimic a machine digitaltion. This wasn't slop net dui was siberate, ANACT airfully crafted camoage. The more we dug, the clearer the picture became. The killer wasn't just erasing tracks, then where, constructing, the M, building a digital layer by layer. Every deleted file had a ghost twin, a seemingly innocuous fragment left behind, just enough to mislead. Eva specializaries have had a compensatory data point, designed to explain away the A anomaly. This was the work of an architect, not just of buildings, but of deception. I found myself tracing a peculiar digital signature, a string wasenters netted within the metadata of a seemingly random backup file on Thorne and Arsenal server. It wasn't malicious code, nor was it an identifier. It was a S the tick flourish, a unique, digital quence that had no functional purpose. It was a painter's enish stroke, distinctive and unnecessary, yadinia present. A chill snaked up my spine. This wasn't just a cover-up, it was a performance. The killer was. They were Tanta leaving breadcrumbs not found, but to be noticed by the right observer, an intellectual challenge. The implications were profound. This individual was not only intelligent and meticulous, but also arrogant. They wanted near cleverness to be appreciated. The pressure mounted, a cold, insistent hand on my back. If the Cathairs this a audacious, this an Aiden, they wouldn't stop at one. My investigated me deeper into the digital labyrinth, away from Thorne's immediate devices and into the infrastructure that wasn't my connected world. The trail of the killer's digither hinted at a brief, untraceable connection to a secure server farm. I needed to see the raw network traffic, the unadulterated data streams, for myself. Access to Theocility required stringent clearance, a process that Bell in its slowness. The air was frigid, artificial winter-thenned by industrial-strength cooling units. The acesive hum of thousands of per-killer, guttural growl vibrated and rove the raised floor wreath of feet. Rows upon rows of racks stretched into the distance, each a glowing monolith of green and amber LEDs, a silent testament to the vast, unseen world of information. A technician, at and perpetually squinting at a monitor, guided me to a thea. We had pulled the relevé from the ingress points you specified, Dr. Singh, the technician said, gesturing to a screen filled with scrolling lines of hexadecimal code and time-stamped entries. My eye feed for anomalies, for a nigh thing that echoed the subtle digital fingerprints Aya Irfian NAE's smart home. The sheer volume of data was staggering, a digital ocean. I felt a familiar tension in my shoulders, that of the killer's unseen presence. Then, it happened. Myths fixed on a block of network traffic from a Parthair one briefly a Sokthar loud storage. Amidst the routine Pathology, a sequence appeared brief and fleeting. It was Pacific unusual data packet, an OBSA protocol flahouldn't have been present in standard communication. Its structure, its peculiar header, was almost identical to a unique, NHLE specific anomaly I had painstakingly extracted from Thorne's home network logs, a digital signature I'd initially dismissed as a rare, transient error. But here digital in, leave, acetively transmitting. My breathing irregular. Teyascent a historical log entry. This was happening now. The technician looked a blinking. See what, Dr. Singh? Just standard traffic. My eyes darted back to the screen, but the specific packet was gone, lost in the torrent. It was fast, too subtle for an untrained eye. But I had seen it. The same unique digital ghost, bearing echo of the method used in Thorne's home. It was catching a glimpse of a phantom. Thniller wasn't just taunting us with past breadcrumbs. They were actively operating, perhaps even monitoring our movements, leaving a new signature, the under-theoses. This wasn't merely a challenge. It was a CT of aggression, a direct threat. The killer was still other-real playing, and the wasn't than I had dared Theogine. The chill of the data center isn't cold walla and blinking servers sia into their counterpoint to the racing thoughts in my head. Rows of towering racks hummed a low conat thrum, their indicator lights a mesmerizing chaotic dance of green the ember. Each blink represented a fragment of data, a transaction, a connection. I felt like an archaeologist sifting through the digital sediment of a forgotten alakillerarching for a fossilized truth. The ghost, a fleeting packet, was still a fresh wound in Mindmurray, a challenge I hadn't yet fully grayed. We've got a swazant Dr. Singh. The detective's voice cut through the mechanical symphony. My brother-riding sligkilera frigid ear. He stien aside me, gething towards a monitor displaying a complex network diagram. Thorne's business partner, financial motive primarily. Thorne was about to cut me out of a major project, effectively ruining my career. I leaned close or gaze fixed a screen. The detective scrolled through a series of documents. Acial projections, a digitalos outlining disagreements, Athes compellingly, a serious CSS logs. His credentials. Specifically, the detective continued, pointing to a highlighted entry, were an AD to disable the primary external security protocols on Thorne's smart homes than an hour before the estimated time of death. Detective Dedress traced back to a cafe just blocks from his own apartment. It low a damning. The lot herely showed the business part NN's unique user ID initiating a sequence of common that's detective asked the external perimeter. A digital footprint as clear as a size 12 boot in fresh snow. My mind, trained to look for pata, quickly pieced to the plausible narrative. A desperate para, facing ruin, uses my intimate knowledge of Thorne's system and my own trusted assessor to facilitate a covert entry. It was logical, wasa, and fit the data. And his alibi? I-series of voice flat. Sketchy. Claims he was home, alone, working, no witnesses. His phone records show minim series of I during that window, which, if he was planning something, makes sense. He went dark. For a moment, I felt a familiar pull. The desire to close the case, to find the neat, satisfying conclusion. The business partner fit the profile. A success, motive, opportunity. But beneath the surface, a discordant note resonated. My fingers twitched. I its digital deeper into the raw data to peel back the layers that the automated forensic tools might have overlooked. Protagonist need to see the full Thorne's reef from that specified frame. Turning to the Tarian, who was silently observing our exchange. Every single byte, not just the parsed logs. The technician nodded, his fingers flying across his keyboard, bringing urent of raw data. Lines of hexadecim cess rolled past, a blur of numbers and letters. I zoomed in on the window immediately surrounding the secute hebelment, focusing the specific session initiated by the business partner's credentials. The initial sequence W. Cecily as the detective described. Login, authentication, command execution. It was a LL-Thewa cysteine and incriminating. But then, as I pushed deeper, scrutinizing the TIA, the protocol headers, the minute deviations in packet size, I saw it. A Flythe. Not the phantom I'd seen before, but something related. Embedded within the data stream, a microburst of activity. A single theost imperceptible data packet, injected, B detective Artner's euthethetian and the execution of the disabling command. It was a digita wastum lim, an echo of the ghost I had pursued earlier. This packet, almost inviate a standard analysis, was not part of the legitimate session initiated by the business partner's credentials. It was a foriguazana parasite latched onto the connection. The legit initial was from a cafe IP, was the partner's credentials. But this injected packet, this tiny malicious instruction, was the tethiger. It leveraged the established legitimate session to auth the critical command, effective there acting the partner's assess. The partner's credentials were used, yes, but not by the partner. They were merely the conduit. Look here, pointing a gloved finger at the specific hexadecimal sequence on the screen. This packet. Its timestamp is off by milliseconds from the preceding and succeeding packets. Its routing information is subtly differdigital like a single pathocrafted counterfeit bill slipped into a stack of genetheriancy. The detective squinted at the screen. Hey, dat me. What are you saying, Dr. Unknown? The architectural command to disable Thorne's security wasn't issued by the business partner. It was injected. Wasn't external, a CT theory backing on the partner's legitimate, albeit compromised session. The cafe IP address, the sketchy alibi, the clear thiel motive. All of it suddenly rearranged itself in my CSS asn't just circumstantial. It was detective-afted circumstantial evidence. A red herring, carefully laid out, designed to be discovered. The killer hadn't just murderware. They had orchestrated a DAL frame-up, using the business partner as a convenient scapegoat. The detective's face hardened, a grim realization dawning. The killer was not just ruthless. They were cunning, precise, and strategically advanced. They understood how to manipulate digital evidence, how to create a phantom culprit. My initial unease had been correct. The trail was too neat. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a calcal way strike, designed to mislead and misdirect, leaving a trail that led straight to an innocenti. And the killer was still out there. The killer hadn't just orchestrated a death. They had meticulously crafted a narrative around it. The cafe IP a dress, the sketchy alibi, the clear financial motif. A L of it was a careful trail, a red herring designed to be discovered, to seb investigators down a cul-de-sac, au fait assumptions. His mind replayed the scene at Thorne's smart home, subsequent a nala in killer a suicide note, so perfectly phrased, the digital footprint of a man pushed to the brink. His gut, that old nagging voice, had been whispering it a L along, but now the whisper was a killerist had been looking for the killer, but Protagonist should have been looking for the puppeteer. Realization hit him with the force obenical blow, leaving him breathless in the sterile quiet of his office. Wasn't it just a murder? It was a performance, was to manipulate perception. If the killer was so good at ferreting evidence, then the real wouldn't be obvious. There be killerlies, the things that killert fit, the microscopic threads left behind despite the careful sweep. His eyes fell on the report behethement. A unique chemical killer was Protagonisted catalogued before, but couldn't immediately place. It was a polymer remantheric found digital F. Thorne's desk, near a rarely assessed cable port. It wasn't Fahy Home's construction materials, nor from a NY cleaning products. It was a NA Noma Atwasa way, almost a NA afterthought. Protagonist pulled up Bina base, filtering for that specific polymanlia handuf industrial applic bean and one raw the R obscure hobbyist use. High-end sculptural fabrication. The digital killer Thorne's home security system gnawed at me next. Sina he'd staresent for a heart at, then gone. It pointed to an intrusion, subtle and sophisticate, wasn't to look like background noise. Protagonist had been chasing ghosts, but now, Veganist knew where to hunt the M. Kiltheral. How it told to a specific server farm, a behemoth of Dathege known for its robust security and anonymous client base. Not a direct link to the killer, but a connection to killer was killer wanted to hide. The AIR in the data sent Thorne's cold wallets and blinking servers was dry and hummath the ceaseless whisper of countless machines. Rows of racks stretched into the distance, each unit a glowing rectangular there, housing the digital secrets of the world. Sing, the A-nailist said, asterisking to a particular rack. His voice was low, almost revert. Against the Omnip Digital had managed to decrypt the head. Their packets weren't just data dumps. They were command sequence and emote access, disguised as RON system checks. The tracked the rith thanking of green and a member theriver faces. A flash represented a pulse of information, a transaction, a memory, digital, pointing to a series of physical devices secured within Bean. Encrypted offlost of the time, like clock-thined raced, connecting the dots. Tidochemical signature, a polymer residahi-specific digital anomaly. The ghost login, the command sequences routed through this very data center. And then, the pattern from the secondary incident. The peculiar case of the Gakiller's accidental fall, ruled a trachillerp, had all of the red digital detail from that investigation, a microscopic fragment of the same obscure polymer had been overlooked. We did find one uneuthy outing. A payment for server space, Mata Irically, through a shell company, and that shell company has a registered address. He brought the map on his tablet, a pinpoint of peering Cessiet, upscale district on these of my gaze sharpened. It wasn't just a N-Atherie there for its avant-garde sculptural works. A studio owned by an individual who had once been a close associate of Thorne. A former protege whose rchitectural theon had been overshadowed by my men's brilliance. An individual whose work frequently utilized the very polymer I had identified. The pieces slammed towards the RN's sickening clarity. The gallery owner, a prominent collector of Thorne's protege's work, had been about to expose a forgery scandal. A Scathareld have implicate series Oved financially ruined the protege. Thorne's suicide was a preemptive strike, silencing him before he could tell the protege's role and implicating him in the gallery owner's death. The Aya trader had meticulously planned both ithethering an invisible trail. The unique chemical signature, the digital ghost, The pattern of the secondary incident. A L pointed to one individual. An individual whose resentment had festered into a deadly obsession. This wasn't just about covering tracks. It was about framing a dead wassabout protecting a reputation, and about eliminating a nigh one who threatened that carefully constructed facade. The kill just finished. I could feel it. Affable tension in the A ear, the warning echoing between the blinky beaners. They had suck and add twice. What would stop the M from striking again? The pinpoint on the detective's tablet pulsed A.N. Thorne's red glow. My eyes, fixed on the map, widened for the R. A studio owned by an N individual who had once been a close bean of the deceased architect. A former business parhata here of contentious disagreeers. This changes everything. The implications settle in, like lead in my gut. The suicide suddenly looked less like an NCT of despair, and Ni like a carefully staged Pathology, the kind of elaborate thesion a digital might concoct. The architect's digital ghost, that'll inconsistencies I'd picked. The Heya L coalesced around this new focal point. The detective, a man usually unreadden, gripped his tablet tighter. A partner who felt wronged, perhaps. I saw an opportunity. His gaze met the silent acknowledgement of the shift in our investigation. We need to the now. If this individual I wasn't are, they'll know we're closing in. My mind raced, connecting the dots. The architect's just system, his Ohomiath integrated technolon, the very thing that made his death look so seamless. What if the killer had cholera cessed? The system, but had built a backdoor, a pre-existing vulnerability from their time working. The VR, a digit detective of proprietary code, something that would link the ART studio directly to the architect's final moments. We need the original Systema IR deeper layers. My voice firm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Not just what was presented on the surface. The raw data, the cold re. Anything that would show a remote override, an unauthorized command, disguised as a R partner. The Mantiv nodded, I making a call to a colleague. The TL specialist is on standby. He knows the drill. Moments later, we were in a nondescript black vehicle, the city lights blurring into streaks as we sped towards our destination. The AIR inside the cabin was NEA with unspoken tension. I could feel the invisible net tightening, not just around our pect, but around us. The killer, if they were truly as cunning as I suspected, wouldn't simply wait for us to arrive. Any updates a studio Almaya sked, my gaze fixed on the road ahead. The detective's expression was grim. No sign of the detective-ning. There is Seart report he left for an urgent personal matter. Cell phone is off. Luthi, they went dark. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. They is making their move, then. Trying Killer Alir tracks or worse. The stakes had just ratcheted up a know the R notch. We weren't just gay the ring evidence a nigh more. We were in Raka Prevent a know the R tragedy. Our destination wasn't the Sthererst. We needed the they're pulled into a secure, they're on Crete and a stark lack of windows. Town was immediate, a low, powerful thrum that vibrated the floor and up into my bones. Rows upon rows of towering racks theed into the distance, each one housing attitude of blinking lights, a silent symphony of digital processes. A colleague, the tech specialist, was already there, hunched over a portable terminal, his fingers flying across a board. Dr. Singh, he greeted, not looking up. We had got direct access to the architect's cloud backups and the internal netalogs. It's a labyrinth, but Protagonist have found the entrawariao him. I commanded, my voice sharp you killer. He gestured to a bank of servers, their lights a chaotic dance of greena erber. The architect, being an architect, designed his own proprietary home, a automation protocol. His partner, our studio owner, helped him diva the initial security frame years ago. It's trying to wipe a very specific set of histotheta relating to system overrides. This was it, the smoking gun. Can you reconstruct any commands? Show him what they were trying to delete. Are importantly, what they did execute. The specialist NLLD, my brow furrowed in concentration. He began typing furiously. Lines of code scanning rapidly across my screen leaned in. My breath held, watching the digital forensics unfold. The air conditioning IR data center aisle blasted a continuous icy breeze, but I barely felt it. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The detective stood by, his hand resting on the holster of his Sith. Another ending the sterile environment as if expecting an intruder to materialize CSS blinking servers themselves. Then there went grunt from the specialist. Got it. Look silent sing. To a specify ruins on to there. An override command, disguised as a routine firmware update for the architect's NV Thorels. It initiated a SNENS to disab their cameras, unlock a Theron, crucially, triggered a simulated sys to the unction the architect's personal device, making it appear he initiated the find detective. Initial gaze fell on a timestamp, press a success toll a second. It correlated perfectly with the estimated time of death. But the source IP address, muously hidden, now stood exposed. It traced back not to architect's smart home, to a server Theer registered under a corporate shell. It was never truly gone. It was just dormant. Wait, e-world. Thwasf was irrefutable. A carefully crafted digital assassinati theme in plain sight, using the very technology the architects shed thee as there lighted the final piece of evidence, the detectives for specialist Atheed, my posture stiffening with each word. Hither when he looked at me, were wide with a Dr. Singh, his voice low and urgent. The studio, it's on fire, a major blaze. Arson suspected. The killer wasn't just running. They were burning their world down, trying to erase every last trace. Our window was closing fast. The hum of the servers was a low Kansa-arn, a white noise attempting to swallow the silence that hung heavy between us. The ire in the data center, cold wallets and blinking servers, a sharp, dry, and cold, stinging the back of my throat. Rows of glowing indica thoughts pulsed in a lean rhythm, a silent testament to the vast, unseen currents of information flowing. These steel racks. I stood opposite the architect. They're the man's face, theft practiced calm, my hands clasped loosely in front of me. The lead detective stood a few faro my left, my posture coiled, observant. Now a sked for this meeting, Dr. Singh, the business partner said, his voice smooth, devoid of inflection. In this, the unusual Libyan. He gestured vaguely at the flash of gazapment surrounding us. This location is fitting, I replied, my steady, cutting the server hum. It's where the final pieces of Tazzle were found, where your meticulously constructed alibi began to unravel, and where the true motive was laid bare. I took a step forward, the sound of my shoes on the raised floor echoing faintly. The official report stated an accidental fall, followed by a manipulated smart host specialist, wreathed the illusion of suicide. Homan to a brilliant mind. But the details, as always, tell a different story. The business partner's eyes, a flat, unremarkable Guericard the detective, then back killer tales can be misinterpreted. Dr. Grief distorts perception. Grief doesn't just it'll fingerprint, I countered, pulling a slimablet from my coat pocket. The screen glowed, displaying a complex network of time-stamped data logs. Thorne's fortune, tied up in his digital assets, was substantial. Assets you, as his business partner, had significant, though not complete. A CSS to your own financial position, however, was less robust. A series of high-risk investments, a El-Faya, loans piling up. Thorne's demise wire by silence clauses in your partnership agreement. Trethered a substantial portion of his digital wealth into your control. The business partner advened almost partner speculation, Dr. Wild the Ories. Not the Or architects rest on, zooming in on a specific log entry. Thorne's smart home system, a fortress he designed himself, Wahomist. Not by an external hack, bu parten their strative level assess. Someone who knew the system's redundancies, its fail-safes, its uniquerks. Someone who understood that a remote, system-wide override from a specific IP address, even if masked, would leave a unique signature. I pointed to a line on the tablet. This NR instance. A forced override of the environmental controls. The temperature in Thorne's living space was subtly lowered over several hours, then spiked just before his death. His biometrics, recorded by the integrated health monitors in the floor, showed a gradual onset of the RMIA seriodigital cardiac event. The toxicology report found no drugs, non-aons. He was old. He had a weak heart. And that's where your alibi falls apart. You claim to be at a remote access businessy with no network access. But Theta, pulled from the deep logs of Thorne's own system, show a series of precise commands executed fro satellite uplink. An uplink registered to a shell corporation you control. The timing of these commands aligns perfectly with the environmental manipulations. You didn't just know the sys partner he system, remotely pulling the strings. I saw a flicker of something in my eyes then. Not Fethet yet, but a dawning realization that I had seen past my clever knee. The he final CT was brilliant in its cruelty, I stated, my gaze locking onto my. Aft Ceci collapsed. You initiated a PRXS tot, flooded the smart home with a specific high-F series of fave smart home human ear. But designed to cause extreme discomfort and disorient business would have masked Athes for help, a nigh last struggle. And on, the system was programmed to withyogs, to reset to a normal state, mimicking a self-inflicted CT of despair. My F business partners the tablet, highlighting a series of deleted files recovered from a fragmented backup. Betheist one small detail, a ghost in the machine, recording every command, every override, every precise timestamp. It showed you series of signature, connecting you directly to the manipulation of Thorne's environment, the oxygen depletion, the temperature drop, the sound waves. And crucially, it showed the sys-keep-ibe command originating from your satellite uplink, just moments Thorne's biometrics flatlined. The business partner's composure finally cracked. His hands clenched into Fisaha's knuckles white. The placid mask slipped, revealing a raw, calculating fury beneath. The low hum of the servers seemed ensify, a rising tide of mechanical breath in the sterile data center aisle. You think you've got it all figured out, Dr. Singh? He snarled, my voice losing its practiced calm. You think a few thief code prove a nigh thing? Themive everything. I couth, my voice on Watha. They show the motive, your desperate financial situation, the method, your intimate, a demonstrative access to Thorne's most prized creation. Series of Viller. Series doft want Thorne's money. Vented his legacy, his control. You thought you could use his own genius against him, hide behind a digital phantom. But every accession leaves a trace. Not at me, but at the detective. A Emi Hodder, the sidearm holstered at my hip. The detective, however, was faster. He moved with Prague's efficiency, intercepting the lunge, twisting the man's ARM behind Thek with a decisive ant. A grunt of pain eto business partner's lips. The tablet remained clutched in Ma, its screen still glowing with the damning evidence. The Thornes realized was finally shut. Not on our investigation, but on his freedom. Crack. The business partner cried out, a sharp, choked sound as the detective completed his maneuver, pinning the man's ARM high up his back, twisting it to a agonizing angle. The desperate lunge had been a last, futile gasp, an animal instinct to avoid the inevitable. I watched, a silent observer. Sirizavu's other hand moved with practiced speed, detective of steel cuffs that clicked shut around the business partner's wrists in quick suction. The fight drained out of the man, leaving me slumping, breathing heavy thighs, darting wildly, finally settling on me with a look of pure, way-added hatred. You, he rasped, my voice hoarse. You couldn't just leet businessu? A simple accident. I met my voice cessing. The ire in the secure facility, already chilled by the constant whir of unseen machinery. Detective Rapafu voices. Ano the uniformed office business partners. Arj of the now secured business partner, a detective nodded to me. A silent acknowledgement of the theculous work that had led us here. It's over, he stated, his voice digital most weary. We folk learned to scrub the last of the digital transfers from a remote server farm. Thought he could erase the trail. The trail, I knew, was a labyrinth of the smart home protocols, carefully manipulated financial logs, and a series hominid communications that only my team's digital forensics expert had managed to unravel. The subtle inkthenses access tots physical data, the precise timing of the environmental copy in my residence, the almost imperceptible changes in my detheacativity. They had a L whispered of a narrative far darker than Theed. He watered the architect's digital assets, wasn't he? A scat detective was more of a confirmation. The detective confirmed a grim nod. And Tay way to a CCS business, transfinas through a series of the entication steps tied to the architect's biometric partnerfic network, a CSS points. The AI feed with the low, constant hum of thousands of process and business partner scene. A member, blinked incessantly across the black facades of the machines. The architect's financial excellent hidden motive for his demise resided here, a collection of intangible wealth represented by this business partner Nels. These scanned the racks, the dense network cables snake and ace, the tick vines between the units. The business partner had been attempting to finalize the transfer business Hitech Substanier holdings, not just to steal the M, but Sirisit Alfahe Archit Detective Digital the transactions before his supposed suicide. He'd leveraged his intimate knowledge the Hitech's technologica business partner vulnerabilities, exploiting the very systems designed for convenience agaziety. My forensic analysis of the architect's final moments, the minute disassays in his partnerte and Trici's timing of the Say Home's climate care adjustments had contradicted the suicide thief, forcing you to look deeper into the digital realm. The digital forensics expert had then cross-recented tough mallies with network traffic logs, eventually the attempted transfers back to the Bethes Partnermy Pacific IP, address, a CSS remotely Thenmeyer from a terminal within this very data center. Hethate he was brilliant, the detective success Ching as the business partner was led away, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Too clever for my own, that didn't account for someone looks at the why behind the digital noise? I understood. The physical evidence I'd read from the Architect Arch series of beetle bruising patterns, the precise anglum pact, the REM traces of a specific sedative, had been the initial threads. But it was the interplay of that physical truth with the digital footprints, the seemingly innocuous architectsum the thieves that had truly woven the tapestry of the killer's deceptism, rchitectural, a marvel of modern design, had become a non-unwitting accomplice, its data homant witness to a meticulously planned betrayal. Standing there, architect's hum of the servers, the cold Ira Stark a bean he burn, detective of the investigation. I felt a series of fence of closure. Not elation, never elation, but a quieta irkshin. Justice, in its intricate and often frustrating dance, architect. The killer was a PMD, my carefully constructed illusion shattered by the Relly partner of truth. The art of the architect, a man of vistheus to a collection of data points and tissues a digital examina digital. His life, a vibrant business, had been ashort by greed and technolo-theme manipulation. My rollier's a tech pathologist. Architects those hidden narratives, to the voice to the silent evidence. The intricate dance between human decepa and scientific truth, a relentless pursuit of clarity in business partnerian. Every teen architect's very anomalous data entry, every microscopic detail held a piece of the story. And it was my privilege Theos pithek. I digital breath, architects survey my lungs, and turned to leave. Anawa's story was concluded, the hidden nantive brought to light. And somewhere I knew, the R1 was already beginning. Irthia thetha manthatha digital initial B and bean killer silent partner, busai ness business, architects, their killer was their business partners, business partner, their